Hello everyone and welcome to my Dungeon Defenders 1 Redux solo progression series. In this series I'll be playing through the Redux rebalancing mod pack, which essentially rebalances some of the towers and heroes, as well as adding a couple more difficulty settings. Now for those who are familiar with Dungeon Defenders, feel free to skip ahead to my hero introductions, but for now I'm going to talk about what is Dungeon Defenders. So Dungeon Defenders is a Tower Defense ARPG. You get to play as unique heroes who have their own set of abilities and towers. Now, like most tower defense games, there is a wave-based system in place that every wave, a unique set of enemies comes out and attacks you. Now, in this case, we are defending our Eternia Crystal, basically the exit for the enemies. We need to destroy this for the enemies to win, for us to lose. So our whole goal is to protect our Eternia Crystal. And to do so, we'll place towers using our unique heroes across the map and key choke points, but as well as playing as our unique heroes to contribute to each wave. And this is what keeps drawing me back to Dungeon Defenders 1, is that there is this whole balancing act of, oh, do I want my character to have better towers, be a stronger damage character themselves, or a little bit of a mix? And one of those things that really helps that system is their progression system with the loot. So, like most standard ARPGs, loot drops when enemies are killed, sometimes. Also, at the end of maps, you'll get loot. Sometimes that is specific to that map, or sometimes it's like kind of like a generic item. But regardless, loot gives you items such as armor, weapons, you can get pets even, and all these things are to empower your character and make them stronger. And like other ARPGs, you are able to upgrade your loot. And I feel like the upgrade system in Dungeon Defenders 1 is probably one of the better ones, especially compared to the other Dungeon Defenders titles. It really gives you a lot of flexibility in what you want to do. So if I get a piece of armor or loot that has really good hero damage stats and I want to just max that out, if it has, let's say, 10 levels in it, I can put all those 10 levels straight into hero damage and just increase my hero damage that way rather than upgrading the thing and every stat gets a little bit increased. It's like, no, I want to increase this stat and this stat only, which is something that's so appealing to me in a game like this. The loot system really lets you finely tune each one of your characters, and now you do have to get lucky on what loot you get, but one piece of loot on one character might be bad, but it could be transferred to another character and made a masterpiece of an item. And throughout this, I'll be throwing up gameplay in the background so you get an idea of what the gameplay looks like. Hopefully that helps you understand. This series won't really showcase too much gameplay. It's going to have some, of course, because that's kind of the point of a game. But the idea is to have a progression-based series where you come here, you watch my video, and you see how far I progressed or what I did to progress to the next level. It's not really about each wave, each game, each map being seen. It's about seeing what I get at the end of each game. What did I get at the end of each map that is helpful to my character, and then show off maybe how I start building a map or just general progression of what happens throughout the series. And I think that is one of the more interesting things in Dungeon Defenders. There are a couple guides I've read throughout the years of players pretty much documenting their progression. And it was sort of used as like, oh, I did this, if you want to follow along, do the same thing I did. And to me, it was always so fascinating seeing these players who would just talk about how they went from this level to the next, using what towers, using what characters, what their ideas were, what their goals were. And it's one of those things that I hope when you watch the series that it inspires you to play the game alongside, or start your own little Dungeon Defenders experience. So let's start talking about some of the series goals I have for this game. So the main one is going to be the Ultimate Penultimate, beating the old one on Session Difficulty, or Nightmare Hardcore. I haven't really decided. That's like the end-all be-all is what I want to do. Essentially, it is the last boss of the game. I also want to get all the achievements I can get in this game. I believe using the Redux mod, I can still get all the Steam achievements regardless. I have a bunch of them already, but I'm going to try to get all of them on my new characters. But first, let's talk about some of the starter goals. My starter goal will be reach level 74 minimum on all characters I will be using. This is because at level 74, you get to equip your character with mythical gear, which is vastly better than anything below it. There's also better gear than mythical as well at higher levels, but another goal is to get full sets of mythical gear, which gives you just basically a bunch of increased stats. It's kind of like the starting point of where we need to go before we do anything else. And then another goal I want to do after getting the mythical gear is beat the campaign on Nightmare Hardcore, which is essentially the originals game's hardest difficulty. Now, I won't be playing this game traditionally, like going through the campaign and doing every level. I will be doing things to get me progressed faster, so I will be skipping around. There is a bunch of levels in this game that have been added throughout the years. Some are from their game Dungeons Fairs Eternity, which is kind of like kind of failed, kind of flopped. But some of the maps got ported over to this that are, I think, really good and are a bit difficult than the normal campaign, and you get access to them right away. There's challenges that help you unlock some certain weapons, some pets. Any of those, I want to do what will get me fastest to level 74 without being too cheesy, without being too easy to do either. I just want to be able to progress the game in my own kind of way instead of just going through the campaign until I want to do it on Nightmare Hardcore, which will be a challenge. Wow, would you look at that? It's already been almost 6 minutes of me just talking about the game, not showing a single thing of what I'm going to be doing and how I'm progressing. Great. Anyways, let's talk about the stats of the game, and still not play the game. But the stats of the game are pretty basic and pretty straightforward. There is hero health, hero damage, hero speed, hero casting rate, tower health, tower damage, tower range, and tower recharge rate. Now, as the name of each of them implies, they kind of do what you think they do. Hero health gives you more hero health. Hero damage increases your hero's damage. Hero speed increases your movement speed. This has a cap of like 100 levels, so after that, there's no point spending that. And then hero casting rate is actually more important than you might think. It is how fast you place towers and repair towers and heal yourself. This is especially more useful on harder difficulties because they will give you a timer for each wave, and if you don't have enough casting rate, you will not be able to place all your towers out in time. And now same thing with the tower health. It gives your towers more health. Tower damage increases the damage of your towers. Tower range increases the range of your towers, which is pretty important because your range of the towers are very small at the beginning of the game. And the tower recharge rate, which is also another one to put points into early, and it matters a little less further on, but it still matters. But it basically increases the attack speed of every one of your towers. And then there's two more stats called ability stats. There's ability 1 and ability 2 stats. Essentially, if you get a character that has, like, say, the monk, and something has a tower boost stat on it, which is its ability 1, if you go to another class, it'll boost their ability 1, not just tower boost. So you don't have to worry about finding specific ones for that character. It's just kind of like a catch-all ability 1. Let's just mention this real quick before we get into the heroes, is that there's also something called DU, or defense units, or you'll see minion units, or MU. This is basically how many towers you can place on the field at once. Each tower has a set amount of DU or MU that they use. Each map has their own set limit too, so you can't go over it. But the idea is you want to get as close as possible as you can, just because then you can use as many towers as possible. Alright, without further ado, let's get into our hero introductions. First up, we have Leon the Monk. He's going to be more of a supportive type hero. He's going to be placing down towers that are his auras. His auras are very useful in slowing down enemies, doing damage over time, and lowering their strength. He can also place down a healing tower that heals whoever is in it, which is useful for boss fights, I would say. But for the most part, he's going to be mostly on supportive towers, so basically slowing down enemies, doing damage over time, and weakening them. Now, this might change for Leon. Leon might become my more played character because tower boosting, hero boost are some of the best abilities in the game, which the monk gets access to. And making him a damage character or more of a tower supporty type character is going to be very useful for progressing to harder difficulties when I shouldn't be able to. Now, Leon will be mostly focusing on tower damage, tower attack speed, and tower range. A bit in tower health so our auras don't die on us. But essentially, that's what he'll be speccing into. He might change over time, but for now, he's going to be more of an aura/hybrid, which will be very useful for the early game. Next up, we have Keel the Summoner. And the Summoner is likely going to be one of the MVPs of the entire progression series because the Summoner has its own defense unit called Minion Units. And because the Summoner gets its own Minion Units, you can basically, whatever build you have that doesn't have a Summoner, you can put a Summoner into it, which is super useful because the Summoner units are good. They can heal themselves using one of the other minions that it has, and they can also be blockades as well. So it just has like the whole package that is just added on to your defense units in the terms of minion units, which is just super useful to have. It makes these harder levels a lot easier because you just have this extra amount of units to just place down basically double the defenses. For the most part, Keel, the summoner, will be focusing on increasing his tower damage, increasing his tower range, and attack speed. These are kind of the more important stats. He'll have a bit of health as well, because having defense health on minions is actually really useful because they can heal themselves. So just having more health just has this more pool of damage that they can take. And in worst case, your blockade breaks, and then you have this backline of archers that also are tanky for some reason that can basically just slow down or stop progressing the enemy invasion. Next up, we have Deft, the Series EV. So Series EVs are kind of specialists in placing ground traps. Not really traps, but like beams, I should say. So Deft will be mostly focusing on using blockades at the start. Blockades are just super useful to have because they basically stop an enemy where they are and they have to get past it. Sometimes they can kind of finagle their way through it, which is just because the game is old. But for the most part, they will be our main line of defense in terms of health, blocking enemies, securing choke points so our other towers can do damage. Later into the game, we'll be focusing more on the tower buff beam, because at some point you don't really need blockades if you're doing enough damage, but the tower buff beam buffs your towers to kill these enemies faster. You get what I'm saying. But essentially, the Def right now is going to be focusing on blockades, and eventually he'll be buffing his other towers. So right now he's going mostly into defense health, but sooner or later it'll be tower health, tower speed, tower range, just to increase all these stats for these other towers. Next up, we have Silas, the Apprentice. The Apprentice mostly focuses on having damage towers. They do have blockades as well, and the blockades are useful as they remove the special elements from enemies, which is something to keep in mind. Damage towers include the Fireball Tower, the Deadly Striker Tower, the Lightning Strikes Tower. These are all very useful towers to use, and you can really contribute a lot of damage to the fight and a lot of AoE damage, which is very critical in a game that spawns thousands of enemies per round. So he'll be focusing a lot on tower damage, tower attack rate. Tower range matters too, so you can hit far away. But for the most part, tower damage, tower attack speed matters way more. And a little bit of tower health just in case you get some stray hits. Very good at just doing a lot of damage with this tower. Its hero abilities are pretty meh, but I definitely prefer using the damage towers of this character. And on to the last character I'm adding for now, the Huntress, Mercy. Mercy is going to be using mostly traps. She might be focused on tower damage, or not tower damage, I'm sorry, hero damage. But traps, for the most part, are very good at just crowd control. There is one trap called the gas trap that basically makes enemies kind of just like choke for like, I don't know, 20 seconds, but they can't move. And it doesn't affect every enemy, but it's very good at affecting the enemies that are just like kind of like the little mobs that kind of matter, that, you know, if they'll overrun you if you don't. You probably won't see too much of her at the start of the game, because most times she's just not, it's just not useful to have right at the start. And you can focus better on other characters just because the way her tower scaling doesn't work. Her hero damage is pretty good. I have used Huntress before as my main DPS, and it is definitely really good damage, but it is inferior to the monk in a couple ways. And that may be my last character I have right now, but I will be adding more heroes to my team as I see fit. These heroes may change also respective to their roles, so Leon might become more of a DPS hero damage spec monk rather than a tower defense spec monk. This is just depending on how I feel and what I think might be better. I might add another monk that just becomes all auras, and then you change Leon to be a focus on damage. We'll see along the lines of what we need and what will be useful to the team. I might add a Squire to add more defenses, more options to play with. But for now, I want to kind of stick it to 4 or 5 characters. I'm probably just going to be using 4 and kind of skip out on the Huntress for a bit, just because those 4, the Monk, the Summoner, Series EV, and the Apprentice, all kind of cover every base I want to get covered in terms of how I want my damage to be stacking. So we'll focus on those 4. New characters will get added when we need to. But it'll be easier once we are further in the game, so we can instantly catch them up to our level. Alright, after 14 minutes of intro, let's actually get into the gameplay. So when I first started out, I wanted to do not the Deeper Well, which is the first map in the game, but I saw someone on another Let's Play, or a solo progression I should say, where they were only using 2 characters and they started on Dread Dungeon. So I was like, oh, I'm skilled in this game, I can clearly do this. So I went there, and the results were not good. I lost in the first wave, which is pretty detrimental because you don't get anything from the first wave, which is a bit of a pain because like you can't upgrade anything. You kind of get some XP, but it doesn't really help you. One of the things you will notice is that sometimes this game will split into 4 different screens. I'm not playing with 3 other players. That is me using the DD1 Redux mod that allows me to add other controllers. This is useful, so now I can get XP and loot from each of the characters. XP matters a little more, loot matters a little less right now. But right now I want to get all the characters leveled up, and this is the easiest way to do it. It's one of the rebalancing things that Redux adds, which is super useful and makes it so you don't have to have some weird plugin or extra controllers lying around to just have XP go to multiple characters. But you'll see here, it doesn't matter. I fail completely on this map because I think the main thing is I don't have blockades yet, which definitely are a super helpful thing to have. But I don't have any of those yet, and not having those is basically going to be a loss for me, and I just am not skilled enough to be able to kite all these enemies around with such little health and playing only one character at a time. So instead of trying to go to the Dread Dungeon, which I am currently dreading, I am going to go to the Deeper Well, which I wanted to avoid, but I was like, well, I can't do Dread Dungeon, so I might as well go back to Deeper Well. But I can do this on Medium. And this helps a little bit because you get a little bit more XP, you can get better chance of better items, and playing on easy is like super trivial on this map because of the way the enemies scale, but playing on medium is about a normal level to play at. So I played on this, a lot of my towers included just having a lot of summoning towers around the map just to attack things, which definitely helped out a ton because the summoner is just so useful in terms of just how much damage you get for one unit. They do attack kind of slow, but the archers are definitely like the strongest of all the towers I started with. So I use them for the most part for this map, and you'll see that they help me out quite a lot. And then eventually I get a couple levels of my other characters, start placing down electrical auras, which are useful for damage over time from the monk. The fireball tower, I don't think I use that on this one. I think I usually use electric towers and electric auras, I should say, and the summoner's minions. But for that, it worked out pretty well in Deep Well. We ended up here at level, let me see, around level 7 or so, which is useful and will help us a lot more than you think because we access to other towers at this level. Now I'm going to go back and try to do Dread Dungeon and see if with the blockades if I can actually be able to beat the level. So I'm back to Dread Dungeon with a newfound determination in my level 7 of the characters, and I was able down now to place down my blockades, and I was like, oh, this should be great. I'll place down blockades. On the first round I don't really have that much DU, so I'll just use 2 electric auras on 2 different spots and then use my character to do damage, which I thought, like, this is genius. Well, what I really should have done is I should have picked up some items in the Deeper Well. I didn't pick up any because, like, it probably won't matter. Oh, it mattered. So my character does no damage. Leon is not hitting hard right now, and these blockades don't have much health. So the first couple waves I am struggling really hard, and I actually lose a couple times, but I'm like, there has to be a way, because this guy, someone beat it without having any gear, or maybe he had very basic gear, but they had level 0 characters, whereas I'm playing level 7 characters, and I should be able to do this by just, I need to get past the first wave. Getting past the first wave is super important, because then you get more items, you start getting items, I should say, and you get an influx of mana so you can place down all your towers. So the idea was, if I get past the first wave, I can probably beat this. Now, I ended up coming up with a strat I kind of took from another character, but, or another player, I should say. Essentially, I placed down blockades first round, and instead of using electrical auras, which only affect enemies that are not electric type, I placed down proton beams, which do like kind of like normal damage, so they just affect every enemy. And I'm not too sure, I haven't used these too much throughout any of my playthrough, or any of my playthroughs, I should say, but they attack really fast for how cheap of an investment they are, because I have not invested any stats into, or very little stats into damage of the Series EV, but placing these down allows me to clear out a good clump of enemies, and then I don't have to worry about an enemy being stuck over hitting the tower if they are that type. The issue is I don't know the placement of these, so some enemies just kind of sat out of range and started hitting my towers. That was cleared up in the second round because I placed down basically an X of each of these, so it would cover the entire little choke point there, and then I can go around placing down electrical auras, other towers, my minions. These are all become super useful, especially because in later waves you get ogres, which have a lot of health, and the minions, or the wyverns that spawn, the minions can take care of very easily. Now, I won't show you the slog that is an hour and 30 minutes of me trying the dreaded dungeon, but after I managed to beat that first wave, basically this whole sign of release comes, because I can open these chests, and these chests will give me items. And it doesn't matter if the items are good or not. If I get a weapon for the monk, it is very useful, because I can upgrade that weapon using the mana I collected. With the just any armor piece I get that has some sort of stat that buffs a tower is useful right now. So I'm looking at all the items I get, and I'll get more after this round. But the other thing that's useful is just getting all these towers out. Getting all these towers out is super important just for getting past this next level. And it sounded like this cascading effect where like, you get past the first round, you can probably get to the last round. The last round is going to be tough because you've used all your resources kind of thing. Now, at some point through this red dungeon, I managed to get a monk weapon, which is really useful because I'll be playing as the monk for the most part, and having a monk weapon instead of the default weapon is really useful because you can upgrade it. And upgrading your weapons at the start of the game is super helpful, because instead of doing like 24, 25 damage, I'm hitting like over 100, which doesn't matter late game, obviously, but at the start, doing 100 damage, the time to kill enemies is so much faster, because it's instead of, 20 hits, it's like 6 or 7, which is still kind of a lot, but it's at this point, that doesn't matter, that's a lot, because it's just so much extra damage coming in for me that I can basically guard a lane with my character and devote more resources somewhere else. So you'll probably see in the background, but the essential thing to know is that each choke point I have here has an electric aura, an ensnare aura, a fireball tower except for one, and then a blockade from the physical beam of the Series EV. It has proton beams from the Series EV, and then it has a bunch of archer minions from the summoner class. Now, the summoner also, I have placed an archer by my crystal just in case a wyvern kind of sneaks through, that there's something there to attack it. Summoners are very useful for like the last-ditch effort defenses as well. So usually I'll put one, if I have extra DU, towards the back of my base, just to protect anything at the last second sneaks here with 1 HP. It's there. I don't have to rush back over there. Now, between each round, I am checking every single item that is green or I just think that another character needs, and picking them up and seeing if they are worth it to put on another character. I'm also getting a ton of experience, and I'm putting all this XP into what I mentioned earlier for each of my characters. I want to do some hero damage on Leon. I kind of made Leon more of a hybrid. Heal is focused on damage. Depth is focused on health for his towers. Silas is focused on damage on his towers as well. It's just all these things are coming to play that are making each round easier than the last, because I'm getting all this XP, getting these new items, and eventually it leads up with me winning on this map. Though it did take a very long time, because I had to be pretty meticulous on how I want to place things. The rounds lasted a while because the enemies weren't just dying right away. They had a lot more health. They ran out like bullet punches. But eventually I found a new weapon on Leon that was really good. I think I got weapons on every character. I ended up getting gear on every character. It's not all great gear, but this will help us progress even faster. This is going to be kind of rounding up this episode. We do manage to beat Red Dungeon, which was great. We got these I believe polished chain bracers. It's like another equipment slot that is not part of your main set of equipment. I think there's only one that was really like any good, so it doesn't really matter. But that's kind of like the rewards you get for some of these extra maps, which comes super handy because you'll get just good gear from it. And well, we'll be using that to just increase some of our stats. They do cost a lot more to upgrade, so I'm not too worried about them too much. But for now, we got all of our characters out of the Dread Dungeon, leveled up, got some gear, and now we're going to try something different. So instead of going through the campaign normally, I'm going to go back to the first level and try it on an even harder level difficulty, or maybe the second level, just so I can get even better loot and even faster XP rates. The main goal isn't to beat the campaign normally, it's to beat on the hardest difficulty. So I'm going to try to go through and play on the harder difficulties first, and if I get to, squeak past a round that's on a harder difficulty, that's a good amount of XP right there. That is a good amount of levels, XP, loot, very useful things to have for just getting to the end game faster. So we're going to end off this episode with level 19 on all of our characters except for Silas. The XP kind of works kind of weird. XP, you get double XP if you are the one to do the killing blow on the enemy, and that includes your towers. So that's why the levels will be a little bit fluctuated right now. But for the most part, I'm going to try to keep them very similar. Going to have all these guys deployed. So we have Leon at level 19, Keel at level 19, Deft at level 19, and Silence at 18. And then I'll have somewhere on the screen their stats, their gear right now. And yeah, so hopefully you enjoy this episode. Hopefully it didn't bore you. Dungeon Fighter is kind of a boring game to watch in my opinion. But I think having it broken down in such a way where it shows kind of like the loot progression, the highlights, the difficult maps of the difficult challenges I've faced, and kind of explain that, maybe you'll find it interesting. And I don't know when the next episode will be up, but hopefully you enjoy this episode, and thank you for watching.